Good morning, everyone. It is the cancer that nobody talks about. Colorectal cancer rates are increasing for people under 50, and they could double by the year 2030. A new experimental treatment is ridding cancer in trial patients with a specific kind of mutation, all while avoiding the detrimental side effects of traditional treatments. CBS News Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. John LaPook talked to two patients in the trial who are both now cancer-free.
I'll race you!
After a 3-year struggle, Kelly Spill finally has the wind at her back.
When did you start to notice that something wasn't quite right?
About a month before I had my little guy, Jace, and I was going to the bathroom. I would see blood, and I went to my doctor, and she pretty much said, you know, you're about to have a baby in a month. Things are moving around, and this is kind of what goes on.
But rectal bleeding continued for months after Spill gave birth. Both her obstetrician and internist told her she probably had hemorrhoids.
And I had a gut feeling that it was going to be cancer. I just knew.
A colonoscopy confirmed Spill's instincts, and a specialist told her and her mother what to expect next.
He told me that I most likely wouldn't be able to carry another child again. Having to go through chemo, radiation, surgery, pretty much it would all be fried up down here.
Can you give me a hug?
But there was a long-shot chance of avoiding all that. Researchers at Memorial Sloan Kettering tested her tumor for a genetic mutation that only occurs in about 5 to 10% of people with her type of early-stage rectal cancer.
Wow, good job.
She was a match and eligible for an experimental treatment.
I just thought, just what if that works?
Here's how this treatment works. Some cancer cells can put the brakes on our immune system, allowing a tumor to grow. This experimental immunotherapy is an antibody that releases those brakes so the immune cells can attack the cancer. Dr. Aundrea led the trial at Memorial Sloan Kettering.
That's all tumor.
She had that big, bulky tumor.
This is no.
It's hard not to say wow.
It's hard not to say wow, I know.
Because it's a wow.
Yeah. We weren't truly expecting this type of response where every single patient, the tumor's gone, completely gone, and especially how quickly they responded. We haven't had to radiate anyone or do surgery for any of our patients.
In the trial, all 18 patients had complete resolution of their early rectal cancer. Imtiaz Hussein is one of them. At age 26, he had similar symptoms and quickly got a colonoscopy.
I think that after 4 days, I got an email saying that I was diagnosed with cancer.
Like Spill, Hussein was eligible for the trial at Memorial Sloan Kettering. He traveled from Virginia to New York City every 3 weeks for treatment.
After 4th treatment, I was barely having any symptoms. I got a call from my research coordinator, and she said, "You don't have cancer anymore." I was crying in my car. So many similarities between our stories. It's just relief. Like you seeing a son after like a year, kind of feeling.
I'm slowly realizing what I went through, how hard it was, and how it's like the rainbow is here.
Dr. John LaPook, CBS News, New York.
This immunotherapy trial was targeted to 5 to 10% of patients with early-stage rectal cancer with this specific type of mutation. Doctors hope the treatment could one day be promising for other kinds of cancer as well. Well, more than 500,000 people visit the emergency room every year because of painful kidney stones, and doctors say summer is kidney stone season, with rising temperatures increasing the risk of this common problem. Michael George has more on that.
Tawana Atkinson makes sure to drink plenty of water, especially on these hot summer days.
2 gallons in the course of a day, and I try to get a little extra in there if I could.
She's been upping her fluid intake after suffering a kidney stone last year.
It feels rather painful. It feels in an achy type of pain in my lower back.
It's estimated 1 in 10 people will have a kidney stone in their lives, and doctors see an increase in kidney stones in the steamy summer months because patients can get dehydrated, especially in warmer climates.
Individuals who work outside and sweat more or spend more time doing outdoor activities, exercising more, they are more likely to have more concentrated urine and thereby develop more stones or develop stones for the first time, or even increase the size of the stones that they may already have.
Dr. Deepa Maliekkal directs the Kidney Stones Prevention Center at Northwell Health.
Prevention involves increasing hydration, and that's going to decrease the precipitation of kidney stones, basically prevent those that are there from getting bigger. The other thing is trying to adopt a lower salt diet.
Once you have had a kidney stone, there's a 50% chance of developing another one within the next 5 years. Tawana needed surgery for her kidney stone, but another was diagnosed a few months ago.
They are watching it very carefully.
She's also eating more vegetables and getting more physical activity to try and reduce her risk. Michael George, CBS News, New York.
Some medical conditions can also increase the risk of kidney stones, such as obesity, high blood pressure, and diabetes. A new strategy to stretch supply of the monkeypox vaccine was approved this week. It allows for a much smaller dose, but does it provide the same amount of protection? Mandy Gaither shows us what doctors and health experts are saying about it.
It's a vaccine in high demand. As monkeypox cases continue to climb, supplies are being stretched. An FDA emergency use authorization now allows for doses to be cut to 1/5 what they were, allowing for 5 doses out of a standard 1-dose vial. But will it provide the same amount of protection?
There's a really good set of data from a wide set of vaccines, not just for smallpox, but also flu and rabies, that this way of administering vaccines can actually be more effective.
Monkeypox is a virus in the same family as the one that causes smallpox. For the smaller dose to be effective, health experts say it has to be given between the layers of skin rather than under the skin, as it had been given before.
It creates an equivalent immune response and so therefore quite likely equivalent protection.
The FDA says delivering doses in this way has resulted in more redness, firmness, itchiness, and swelling at the injection site, but the agency says those studied had less pain and the side effects were manageable.
But we're taking a little bit of a leap here in recognition of the severity of the epidemic right now.
Officials say this move could increase the number of vaccine doses in the national stockpile from 441,000 to more than 2.2 million. However, there will be a learning curve.
The folks who are giving it are going to have to use different needles, draw up different amounts. So there's going to be an element of training that's going to have to go along with it.
The monkeypox vaccine manufacturer also sent a letter to the White House expressing some reservations about the new strategy. All right, coming up, life's final chapter can leave debt and mistrust. We'll have that story just ahead on Mid-Morning. All right, we're back, everyone. What starts out as a good deed, helping a loved one get into a home, can turn into a legal nightmare in some cases. Kaiser Health News, along with NPR, has been looking into nursing homes that have filed lawsuits against not only residents, but also their friends and family to collect unpaid bills. Consumer investigative correspondent Anna Werner has that story.
81-year-old Barbara Robinson spent the past 2 years fighting a lawsuit, all because she volunteered to help an elderly friend of her mother's move to this county-run nursing home in Rochester.
They caused me a lot of grief.
It all began in February 2018 when Robinson agreed to act as power of attorney to help the friend file for Medicaid to pay for the nursing home and then move in.
A lot of pressure for me to get that done and get it in there because they needed to get her signed up.
But then the nursing home asked Robinson to sign this admission agreement, saying she would be the responsible party ensuring they'd get paid.
So I said, I'm in no way can be responsible for this woman's bill.
She says nursing home staff told her not to worry, she wouldn't be.
Because if they had said to you, well, yeah, ultimately you're going to be responsible, what would you have said?
Well, I couldn't have signed it. I couldn't have signed it. There was no way. I'm on Social Security.
Yet after the friend passed away, the county sued her for $21,000 in unpaid bills, even though she no longer had power of attorney. A judge later dismissed the lawsuit.
I thought, you can't do that to somebody. You can't just knock on somebody's door and say you need to pay this bill.
But come to find out,
they could.
In fact, in Robinson's area of Rochester alone, a Kaiser Health News review of court records found that over a 3-year period, 24 federally licensed nursing homes filed 238 similar lawsuits, 2/3 of which targeted relatives of residents or friends. Federal laws prohibit nursing homes from requiring third parties, including relatives or friends, to guarantee payment of bills. But attorney Anna Anderson says
this is a growing problem, and it's only getting worse. We will go ahead and file everything.
She says people she has represented have been sued after signing admissions agreements, even if they're not legally responsible.
I don't think anyone that I've met, when they're signing these papers, even when they ask the right questions, I don't think they really understand what they're signing up for.
Why is that?
Well, the language is very confusing.
The nation's largest nursing industry group, the American Healthcare Association, told us, "We haven't heard of our members doing this, and we do not believe it's a widespread practice." Robin King says it happened to her in Cleveland. She was sued after helping move her 86-year-old mother into a nursing home in 2017.
I was shocked. I was in disbelief.
She says she had carefully read the paperwork and made clear she could not pay her mother's bills.
There was one paper we came across, and it said, will you be financially responsible if your mom cannot pay this? And I was like, no, absolutely, like, no, X marks the spot.
Yet 3 years later, the nursing home sued her for over $78,000. Earlier this year, she testified in front of a Senate committee.
There must be a better way to take care of each other and not leave people like me facing life-changing amounts of debt. There's just no excuse for this in America.
Barbara Robinson says she's angry too.
It's like they look around. Who can we try and get this money out of?
Robin King was dropped from the lawsuit filed by her mother's nursing home, but the nursing home is still seeking funds from her mother's estate. Neither nursing home responded to our request for comment, but Monroe County in New York, which operates the nursing home where Barbara Richardson took her mother's friend, told Kaiser and NPR it would be a disservice to the hospital's residents and to Monroe County's taxpayers to allow residents who have assets not to pay what is owed. Robinson says the friend basically had no assets. Anna Werner, CBS News, San Francisco.
Coming up, a sandwich and a song inside a unique dining experience when Mid-Morning comes right back. Welcome back. Who doesn't love a good sandwich? Or what about some good music? One chef is combining both worlds for the CBS series The Dish. Vladimir Duthier visited Mission Sandwich Social in Brooklyn, where all sandwiches have a twist of rock and roll.
We're going to go with some of this herb mayo, which has rosemary, thyme, and fresh oregano.
At Mission Sandwich Social in Brooklyn, Chef Brian Tsao taps into his fine dining experience.
It's a play on a classic Italian combo of melon and prosciutto.
To bring unique flavors with a flair of rock and roll.
It was called the post-melon or the post-melon.
To elevate the humblest of foods, the sandwich.
Everything is so harmonious. Everything's working together. It's almost like a song, a progression.
Tsao's sandwiches start with his secret recipe, Dutch crunch bread.
Maybe I'll give you the exclusive behind the scenes one of these days, but for now it remains a secret.
Each sandwich has a vegetarian option.
I wanted people to still be able to experience the sandwich the way it was meant to be with a vegetarian option.
And they're all infused with his passion for food and music.
The two worlds I wanted to bring together was the world of rock and roll, heavy metal, and New York City urban culture, and kind of blend the two. And I think this is a very good representation of who I am as a person.
When he's not in the kitchen, you can find Tsao rocking out with his band Lost Becomes. His love of music goes as far back as his love of cooking.
I grew up with a Taiwanese father, a Korean mother, but growing up, having Western food was always a treat. The memories ingrained in my mind of these big, saucy subs, just meaty, and, the sauce would be dripping down my hand. I never had something like that in my life, but I was like, I can make something like this. And I was only 13, 14 years old. And before you know it, a week later, there's a meat slicer on the kitchen counter at my house, to my mom's dismay. And my dad had me making sandwiches for lunch for the staff on weekends.
Even at that early age, know that you wanted to cook?
No, not at all. It's pretty common in Asian culture. You know, a chef profession is kind of looked down upon. When I told my parents I wanted to be a chef, they were definitely like, oh no, my kid wants to be a chef. And now they won't shut up about it. Be like, hey, guess what? My son is a chef, you know? So we're gonna start with this short rib that's been marinated in my mom's recipe. And we're gonna start with ranch dressing.
His signature sandwich is his mom's Korean barbecue or bulgogi recipe.
We're gonna put some of this sauce directly onto the meat, along with some fresh mozzarella. Okay. So this is gochugaru, rice wine vinaigrette. Gochugaru is a Korean chili flake. Tiny bit more sauce, and there's a purpose for that.
Okay.
It's so that when I put the fries on...
No way.
This is America, baby. It's America.
And no Korean meal is complete without some kimchi.
I'm gonna close this up.
Wow, this thing is huge. Okay, cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm drooling. I'm drooling as I'm biting into it. It's never happened to me before, where I'm opening up my mouth to eat something and drool.
He hopes to create memories with his sandwiches and hook customers just the way music does.
There's something about like a good guitar hook, the way it sits in the frequency range, it just captures you. Every time I make a sandwich, there's gotta be something about it that hooks you in, where you go, I need to try that.
Sal spent his days building out his restaurant concept and taste testing his menu when many businesses were forced to shutter due to the pandemic.
What did it mean to you during the pandemic and subsequent to it to see some of the violence perpetrated against people in the AAPI community?
It got me very concerned for my parents, for my wife, for my daughter. It got me concerned for the fellow Asian person I've never met before. But I also made it a mission of mine to be the best version of myself. I know that my actions will speak much louder than any of those violent acts can.
He's now a force and a representative in the food industry and hopes to connect people with what he calls the universal language.
Food is big time the universal language. It hits them to their soul. Like that feeling can only come from food. And it's something that's understood by everybody from every culture and every place. When you give someone really good food, it like goes straight to the heart, man.
The taste of the Atlantic Ocean, the story behind Old Bay seasonings, just ahead on Mid-Morning. All right, we're back. Old Bay has been a pantry staple in the Mid-Atlantic for more than 8 decades. But in recent years, the spice blend has inspired a cult following and found its way into everything from potato chips to vodka. Major Garrett met the family behind the beloved seasoning with a backstory featuring an immigrant with a spice grinder.
What's inside a can of Old Bay?
Turns out there's a lot inside that red, yellow, and blue tin. More than just a spicy, salty, smoky seasoning blend. That's in part because of Ralph Brunn, age 97.
Well, my father started a spice company in Baltimore in 1939.
Gustav Brunn, Ralph's dad, fled Nazi Germany for Baltimore in the late 30s.
He had spent actually 16 days prior to coming here in a concentration camp.
Sounds like a narrow escape.
We got out. It was a touch-and-go situation.
Ralph was 14 when he and his family arrived with little money and fewer prospects.
My father looked for a job and couldn't find one, and ultimately somebody told him, well, you got the equipment here, go get in business.
Right.
And he did. He bought this mill in 1935.
The equipment was an industrial spice grinder brought over from Germany, so central to the Old Bay story, it is on display at the Baltimore Museum of Industry.
This machine doesn't make it to America. There is no Old Bay.
This is true. This is what started Old Bay seasoning.
At the time, Gustav made and sold spices mostly to meat packers for things like sausages, hot dogs, and bologna.
His place of operation was directly across the street from the wholesale fish market, which existed there at the time in downtown Baltimore.
And that's how Old Bay found its way into the seafood you eat today. Fishmongers would buy Gustav's spice mix to steam crabs.
Primarily, they used red pepper, used black pepper, mustard, celery seeds, that sort of thing.
Ralph eventually took over the company before selling it to a British firm. Spice giant McCormick owns Old Bay now.
This is what you do.
Not surprisingly, around a crab, Ralph Brunn is a maestro.
No, you don't do that.
Your correspondent not so much.
Email even be tolerated in Maryland. Keep that up.
For some, Old Bay is nostalgic, woven into mid-Atlantic Augusts of yesteryear.
It takes me back to the warm weather. It takes me back to the beginning of summer.
And if you haven't noticed, Old Bay is seemingly everywhere these days. Printed on shoes, aprons, bandanas, shirts, infused into goldfish, hot sauce beer, and yes, vodka.
Cheers, Old Bay!
Greg David is CEO of George's Beverage Company, which took 3 years to develop Old Bay vodka, now sold in the Mid-Atlantic. The first batch produced 600 cases.
And it sold out in 24 minutes. We've done almost 10,000 cases since the middle of March.
The same is true of Old Bay Goldfish, also sold out in record time.
Did you ever imagine a situation where this creation of your father's and your family's would become this sort of runaway brand that it's become?
No, I had no idea it would do that. And of course, I wish my father were alive today in order to see this, because he was proud of this. Was his baby.
His father would also want to pay a visit to the Charmery in Baltimore, where Old Bay caramel ice cream is a menu staple.
That's amazingly good.
And I'm not alone.
You can feel the peppery tingling.
I expected it to, taste like the Old Bay seasoning, but it didn't have that. It was very smooth, actually.
Amid the Old Bay mania, Ralph Brunn is a voice of reason, a reality check on seasonal spice swooning.
Can you love this too much?
I think when they get carried away with having all these Old Bay, this, that, and the other that you're talking about, I think it's a little ridiculous, but that's what they do. It's a seasoning. That's all it is.
Ralph Brunn isn't salty. He's just seasoned.
Major Garrett, CBS News,
Baltimore.
And we'll be right back to wrap things up. Stay with us. All right, be sure you stay connected with us. We are on social media. You can always drop us an email. We'll see you back here next time.